Welcome to Real Estate in Real Time. I'm your host, Woody Zimmerman, here with Mark Skibowski, and I should say the award-winning Mark Skibowski.
The award-winning.
Yeah, because you got a Lifetime Achievement Award.
I did. You know, it's in my name, but my team actually was a critical part to that. It's for total commissions earned over time with RE/MAX, and my team's a big part of that. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations. That's awesome. So.
Beautiful.
Okay, so hey, where we're at right now, because we've been working through the process, and we're at the point where we have the accepted offer.
Yay, we have an accepted offer.
That is always a great feeling when that happens for both buyer and seller.
Buyer and seller, everybody's happy.
But now what?
There's a lot of work yet to go.
A lot to be done.
A lot to be done. So, for the buyer, once you get over the excitement, hey, we've got it accepted, your broker will be in touch with you to tell you, hey, get in touch with your lender and let them know that you've got an accepted offer. Now, most brokers will send a completed copy of the purchase agreement on to the lender. So the buyer, the next step is going to be to go and make formal application for the mortgage. A lot of times, and we have pushed, we want everybody to be pre-approved for a mortgage. Well, that's great, but there's a lot of other steps that have to take place. So you'll schedule an appointment, meet with your lender, and actually fill all that paperwork out that says, okay, we're actually making the application for the mortgage. At that point, the lender will order the appraisal, so be prepared to write a check for the appraisal. Appraisals, again, if you're financing, obviously all of this is contingent on the fact that you're going to be financing. So you write a check to the lender at that point. It's about $500 plus or minus. Might be $450, $395. Figure $500. You're going to write a check for the appraiser. You're going to hand that over to the mortgage lender, and then they are going to order the appraisal. That's not something that your broker is going to do, your real estate broker. It's not something you're going to do. Your lender is going to order the appraisal.
And why is that?
All of the financial turmoil that happened in 2007, 2008, it needs to be a disinterested third party, and technically the appraiser is working for the bank. Even though the buyer says, hey, I'm paying for it. Well, yes, that's true.
Well, that makes sense.
But your lender wants to make sure you use an approved appraiser, someone that has gone through and been vetted through their process.
Okay.
So the lender will order the appraisal. At the same time, you're going to meet, if you've asked for inspections, and hopefully you did in the offer, you're going to meet with your broker and decide which inspections you want to get done. Again, as part of the offer process, we might have defined those things we wanted to have inspected, but now's the time. We need to get them ordered because there's a clear time frame on the purchase agreement on how long you have to do inspections.
Yeah, normally it's like a few weeks.
About 15 days is the norm for us. Inspectors are pretty available at this point, but when we get busier, you may need to stretch that to 18 to 21 days.
Right.
The point is you need to get those inspections completed within that time frame. I'm, Mr. Follow Along, I checklist, do these things. I want to get it off the table as quickly as we can. For two reasons. If there's issues, we want to have time to correct them, to get them resolved. The second thing is we want to keep the process moving along.
Yeah.
The seller, that's a big hurdle for them, is getting past inspections.
Right, because if there's an issue, you've got a lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of stuff going on all at the same time. So you're going to make your application for the mortgage. You're going to decide on which inspections you want. Generally a whole house inspection will give you a good overview of the entire property. Some people choose to have a radon test done. Our area it's very prevalent in our area. I always tell buyers, guess what? It's about $150 for the test, to have a radon test. If it comes back at or above 4.0 picocurie liters, PICU, something like that, whatever it's called, if it comes above that level, then the seller generally will take care of that radon. They'll install the system to take care of the radon. So from a buyer's perspective, I can sleep at night. Hey, there's no radon. Well, it was $150 well spent. If there is radon, the cost of a system is about $1,000. And when you go to sell, it may not mean anything to you as a buyer today. We're only going to be here a short period of time. But when you go to sell, the likelihood is your buyer is going to have a radon test, and at that point, it's going to cost you about $1,000 to get it fixed if you haven't asked for it to be corrected.
Yeah.
So radon, some of the financing types require water tests. Some require septic layout, maybe not a septic inspection, but they require certification that the septic field is at least 50 feet away from the well.
Okay.
Or any part of the septic system is at least 50 feet away from the well. So, and your broker will guide you through all of those steps. So again, we got the offer accepted, we've made our application for the mortgage, we figured out which inspections we want to have, and we get those ordered. We have buyers sign a form, and it's funny, I just tell them, I said, look, you're signing in the fine print, it says I'll be happy to order those inspections for you, but I'm not paying for them. The inspections are a buyer cost.
Yeah.
Even if you've negotiated that the seller's going to pay some closing costs, they're going to pay for some of those inspections, the seller doesn't pay anything on your behalf until you get to closing. And then it's a credit back to you. So they won't pay up front. There's one exception to that, and it's on VA loan. VA requires that the seller pay for a pest inspection. Makes no sense to me, but it's one of the requirements that they do have. Many times the buyer pays for it and then does receive a credit back, but some lenders want the seller to actually pay for that pest inspection along the way.
Okay. But then also, like, your agent can because you can do some specific inspections, like on the roof or electrical or the furnace or something thereof.
Sure.
And that's one reason why it's good to have an agent, because an agent will say, like, okay, I think this would be a good buy, but you might want to have that furnace inspected because it's a little dated.
Yeah, they'll guide you along the way. Ultimately, it's your decision to make, but the agent can give you some input for sure.
All right, so we're going to talk about what happens with those inspection results and what do we do next. Coming up here next, you're listening to Real Estate in Real Time.
Okay. And here we go.
Okay. You're listening to Real Estate in Real Time, and we're going through after what happens after you have the accepted offer. And so we're at the point of inspections and ordering those inspections and then the results of those.
Right, so we've ordered them, we've got them, and we're either pleasingly, really happy,
right?
Or, oh my gosh, what in the world happened?
Right.
Simmer down now.
Right.
Simmer down now.
Right.
If you're buying a 1914 house, in all likelihood, there are going to be some items come up in the inspection.
Right.
Remember, the purpose of the inspections are to make sure that it's safe, that it's habitable, and that the items that are identified in the inspection don't impact the long-term value of the property. Many times we'll get folks, they'll get that report, and some of them are pretty intensive. I mean, they're 30, 40 pages, lots of pictures, a lot of detail. Remember, the inspector is trying to point out everything. That's their job. That's what they're paid to do. And then what we need to do is determine the items that we want to ask the seller to fix on our behalf that impact safety, habitability, or long-term valuation. That is built right into the purchase agreement. Many people think, I get an inspection, the seller has to fix everything.
No.
That is not the case.
No, not at all.
That is not the case. Now, so we've got the inspections. We also have the appraisal. We'll talk about the appraisal in a second. So our next step is to review the inspection report and then write up an inspection response. Again, all within the time frame that was spelled out in the purchase agreement. If we said 15 days, we need to get that response back to the seller. So we get a report that has, there's 4 items that we want to have. We've asked the seller that we feel are items that are safety, habitability, long-term valuation of the property. We're going to write that response up. We're going to send that to the seller. We're going to give them some reasonable time.
Sure.
There are agents that will send it to you at 9 o'clock and want an answer at 8 o'clock in the morning. So at 9 o'clock at night, you get a response. That's not the purpose of an inspection response. In fact, it even says on the response that we have to take into consideration the level of the repairs we're asking for, because ultimately we want to give the seller time to go get estimates so they can make a good decision as well. We would want the same. If we were the seller, we would want to have the time to consider what's going on, to get estimates for it, because many times those items look like they're big ticket items, and quite honestly, they're not. We see double tap breakers a lot. What double tap breaker means, there is a breaker with 2 wires in it where it is designed for 1 wire. So that's a double tap breaker. Well, isn't that great? You know, that the reason that it's unsafe is because there's potential for arcing. It was designed to hold 1 wire, it's holding 2 wires.
Okay.
So the fix is to take a wire nut, put 2 wires in one side, 1 wire coming out the other side, and go into the breaker.
Okay.
So that sounds like, oh my gosh, we have double tap breakers. What will we do?
Yeah.
The fact is, it's an easy correction.
Easy fix, yeah.
So,
and
and it's not that expensive to do.
Right.
And most sellers will do that. You know, some will say, no, it's a bunch of hooey. I'm not going to. But ultimately, then, we have the decision to make. The fact is, we have got to give the seller the opportunity to say yes or no to the repairs. Many times you'll get, especially on older homes, foreclosed homes, people want out. I got the inspection report, I want out. Well, as a broker, what I can do is everything within the contract to try to get you out of that contract. But just because you changed your mind, you know, and the house has a lot of repairs to it, you can't void the contract at that point.
Okay.
You can, but it may cost you in the long run. What am I saying by that? Anybody can sue for anything. Remember when we started this whole discussion on contracts, it is a legally binding contract that you have to function within the terms of that contract. If you choose to break them, you risk being sued for failure to perform on the contract. So we have a litany of items on the inspection report. We ask the seller to fix them, and the seller says, I'm not fixing anything. We can do a mutual release to get out of the contract. If we really feel there are items that impact safety, habitability, or long-term valuation, if the seller agrees to fix them, we keep moving on. I did mention the appraisal. The appraiser can identify for some of the types of financing things that they would like to have repaired. If those don't get repaired, then no financing. So in those cases, many times the seller is more than willing to fix them if the appraiser is called out for the inspections. So that's the second major hurdle to me from a selling standpoint, from a listing standpoint. We get the offer accepted, we need to get past the inspections, get the appraisal back at good value with no conditions, meaning no repairs necessary, things like that. So all of this stuff has taken place within a 30-day window generally.
That's a lot of stuff to get done.
Along with title work, which I didn't even mention.
Right.
So there's title being pulled to make sure you have clear title to the property. That's taking place at the title company. All those things are happening in the background, and then ultimately we're scheduling closing. And I guess maybe next week we'll talk about getting ready for closing.
I think we're going to have to, because we're talking about time. We are just about out of time here for this. But yeah, in that 30-day window, that is a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff going on.
Okay, all right. Well, very good. And speaking of stuff going on, we've got about 30 seconds here. You've got the new building.
We've got it's an old building that we're trying to make newer.
Yeah.
At this point, we're in the process. We've got a lot of the interior stuff done. We're getting estimates for painting the outside. I brought you in a rendering of what the outside's going to look like today. We think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, looking good. Looking very good. And the address for the new building?
Sure, it's 740 South Main Street, State Road 13 in North Webster.
And your email?
Sure, it's Mark Skibowski at remax.net.
All right, well, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the warmer weather. It's like spring is just about here.
I know, we're almost there.
I'm loving this. Okay, you've been listening to Real Estate in Real Time. Have a great weekend.
And just hit that red button, Raj, and that should kill it.